What if I told you that the biggest crisis in women's basketball history is unfolding right now? And the very players who caused it are finally facing the consequences. The WNBA just witnessed something unprecedented, something that exposed the ugly truth about who really matters in this league. And trust me, what you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about professional women's basketball. Picture this. It's supposed to be the pinnacle of women's basketball, the WNBA Finals, where legends are made and champions are crowned. But instead of sold-out arenas echoing with thunderous applause, we got something completely different. Something embarrassing. Something that should terrify every executive at WNBA headquarters. When the finals tipped off without the Indiana Fever, without Caitlin Clark, the league learned a brutal lesson that's still sending shockwaves through the organization today. Championship tickets were selling for $6. $6. You read that right. Not $60, not $16, but $6. That's less than a large coffee at Starbucks. That's less than a fast food combo meal. And this wasn't some regular season game in February. This was the WNBA Finals. The arenas looked like ghost towns. Camera operators desperately tried to avoid wide shots that would expose the massive sections of empty red seats. The sound of the ball bouncing echoed through the silence like a funeral procession. A'ja Wilson and Diana Bonner, the so-called faces of the league, walked onto the court expecting a championship atmosphere and instead found themselves performing in front of crowds that wouldn't fill a high school gymnasium. The humiliation was visible on their faces. During warm-ups, cameras caught A'ja shaking her head, muttering under her breath. This wasn't supposed to happen. These were the players who spent the entire season telling everyone that the WNBA didn't need Caitlin Clark, that the league was bigger than one player, that fans needed to respect the pioneers and stop treating Clark like she was the savior of women's basketball. Well, the finals proved them catastrophically wrong. Before we dive deeper into this absolute disaster, make sure you smash that like button and drop a comment below telling me if you think the WNBA can survive without Caitlin Clark. And hit that subscribe button because we're covering all the drama the mainstream media won't touch. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. When you compare the numbers, the reality becomes even more devastating. Last year, when the Indiana Fever played the Connecticut Sun in just the first round of the playoffs, the cheapest ticket available was $133. Let me repeat that. First round playoff game, regular matchup, $133 minimum. Fast forward to the finals without Clark and the Fever, and suddenly you can get championship seats for the price of a sandwich. The WNBA tried to spin it as increased accessibility, making the game available to more fans, but everyone saw through the corporate doublespeak. This wasn't a marketing strategy, it was a desperate fire sale. Teams were literally running Black Friday promotions for playoff tickets. Black Friday sales for the finals. Think about how absurd that sounds. The championship of professional women's basketball being marketed like discounted electronics at Walmart. The ratings told an even uglier story. When Caitlin Clark and the Fever were eliminated from the playoffs, viewership didn't just drop, it collapsed. We're talking about a nearly 50% decrease from the semifinals that featured Clark to the finals without her. 1.8 million viewers tuned in to watch Clark's first playoff game. That single game drew more eyeballs than all the other playoff games that day combined. All of them. Combined. When she was gone, so were the viewers. Social media engagement fell off a cliff. Highlight reels that used to dominate trending pages barely registered. ESPN segments that spent hours analyzing every Caitlin Clark assist suddenly pivoted to off-season NFL debates and college football predictions. The WNBA Finals became an afterthought, background noise, completely irrelevant in the broader sports conversation. Christine Brennan, a respected sports journalist, tweeted something that perfectly captured the crisis. She wrote, "One player gets injured and more than half the TV audience for the entire league disappears. Has any other athlete ever had that kind of impact on a sport? Golf without Tiger definitely dropped precipitously on occasion, but not like this. This news is alarming for the league." And she was absolutely right. We've seen dominant athletes before. Michael Jordan elevated the NBA. Tiger Woods transformed golf. Tom Brady became synonymous with NFL excellence. But none of them, not a single one, carried the weight of an entire professional league on their shoulders the way Caitlin Clark does for the WNBA. When Jordan retired, the NBA still had Shaquille O'Neal, Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson. When Tiger struggled, golf still had Phil Mickelson, Rory McIlroy, emerging stars to maintain interest. But when Caitlin Clark left the playoffs, the WNBA had nothing. Nobody. Just empty seats and plummeting ratings. What happened next would shock everyone even more. The players themselves started cracking under the pressure. Dana Bonner, usually composed and media-trained, snapped during a post-game press conference. "You fight all year to get here and it feels like nobody cares," she said, her voice tight with frustration. The room went silent. You could hear the discomfort. A'ja Wilson tried to maintain her composure, carefully stating, "We can only control what we do on the court," before adding with barely concealed resentment, "But we deserve more." These weren't just disappointed athletes venting after a tough loss. This was something deeper. This was the realization hitting them in real time, that everything they'd been told about their value, their importance, their status as the faces of women's basketball was built on a foundation of lies. The league had promised them growth, exposure, bigger crowds, mainstream relevance. But those crowds didn't come for them. They came for Caitlin Clark. The social media response was absolutely brutal. Within hours of those comments going viral, fans unleashed a torrent of criticism that didn't pull any punches. "You chased away the star who filled every seat. Now enjoy the echo," one viral post read, racking up more views than the official WNBA Finals highlight reel. Another fan wrote, $6? That's not a finals ticket, that's a parking fee." The memes came fast and furious. Split-screen images comparing packed Gainbridge Fieldhouse during regular season Fever games to nearly empty finals arenas spread across every platform. One particularly savage post showed a crowded Indiana Fever game next to a sparse finals crowd with the caption, "You miss her yet?" The WNBA's own fans were roasting the league, and the players couldn't do anything but watch it happen. Behind the scenes, the situation was reportedly even worse. Multiple insiders claimed that both A'ja Wilson and Dana Bonner privately vented their anger toward league executives, specifically targeting Commissioner Kathy Engelbert's office for the disastrous marketing rollout. They were furious that media coverage had cooled so dramatically. They blamed the front office for failing to sustain the momentum that Caitlin Clark had generated. But here's where it gets really interesting. Other voices within the organization whispered a completely different truth. They suggested the backlash wasn't about marketing at all, it was about ego. All season long, veterans like Wilson and Bonner resisted the idea that Caitlin Clark had fundamentally changed the sport. They framed her popularity as temporary, a media-driven circus that would fade once casual fans realized there were other talented players in the league. They told fans to respect the pioneers, pay dues, appreciate the history. They even suggested, sometimes not so subtly, that Clark's popularity had more to do with her race than her talent. Now, standing in half-filled arenas with championship tickets selling for less than movie tickets, they were living proof that it wasn't just hype. Caitlin Clark represented a genuine movement, a seismic shift in women's basketball, and they weren't the ones leading it. The irony was almost poetic. Stephen A. Smith summed it up perfectly on his show, saying, "You can't chase away the person who built the house, then complain nobody's visiting." It was brutal, but completely accurate. For months, established WNBA players had taken subtle and not-so-subtle shots at Caitlin Clark. Sheryl Swoopes questioned her scoring records. Other veterans dismissed her impact. Some suggested fans only cared because she was white. The underlying message was clear. Caitlin Clark hadn't earned her status. She was just benefiting from media bias and casual bandwagon fans who didn't understand real basketball. But the finals exposed all of that as pure delusion. The fans weren't casual. They were engaged, passionate, and they knew exactly what they were watching. They saw a generational talent in Caitlin Clark, someone who played with joy, creativity, and a competitive fire that made every game must-watch television. When she drained logo threes through no-look passes and orchestrated the Fever's offense with the vision of a seasoned veteran, fans recognized greatness. And when she was gone, they had no reason to keep watching. The WNBA had spent years trying to manufacture stars through marketing campaigns and media pushes, but none of it worked. Then Caitlin Clark showed up and organically became the biggest draw in women's basketball history. And instead of embracing it, the league's established players resented her for it. Now here's where things get even more complicated. And this is information you won't hear from the mainstream sports media. As we move deeper into 2025, Caitlin Clark has been dealing with injury issues that have kept her out of several games. The Fever have struggled without her, and the league's viewership has continued its downward trend. Every time Clark misses a game, ratings drop. Every time she's on the injury report, social media engagement plummets. The WNBA is facing an existential crisis, and league executives know it. They've built their entire growth strategy around the momentum Clark generated, but they never actually protected or promoted her the way they should have. Instead, they allowed veteran players to take shots at her, permitted physical play that bordered on dangerous, and failed to market her properly to capitalize on her massive appeal. One anonymous WNBA player reportedly commented on social media, "It's not the finals, it's open practice with nicer uniforms." That line quickly became a meme, perfectly capturing how irrelevant the championship felt without the Fever and Clark. Fans created countless variations, each one more savage than the last. The WNBA had spent the entire season bragging about sellouts and record-breaking ratings, and suddenly their championship was being compared to a scrimmage. The optics were catastrophic. This wasn't just bad publicity, it was a fundamental exposure of the league's fragility. One player, one team, and when they're gone, the entire operation falls apart. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert tried damage control, releasing carefully worded statements praising the competitive spirit of the finals and highlighting the talent on display. But no amount of corporate spin could hide the reality staring everyone in the face. You can't call it growth when your championship tickets cost less than a movie ticket. You can't claim mainstream relevance when your finals ratings are 50% lower than earlier playoff rounds. You can't build a sustainable league when your entire audience is dependent on a single player. And yet, that's exactly the situation the WNBA finds itself in as we approach 2026. The league is in a panic. They're scrambling to figure out how to maintain interest, how to build new stars, how to keep fans engaged when their biggest draw is injured or eventually retires. Here's what makes this situation even more fascinating. The WNBA had a golden opportunity handed to them on a silver platter. Caitlin Clark arrived with unprecedented hype, massive media coverage, and a built-in fan base from her legendary college career at Iowa. She was everything the league needed: talented, charismatic, marketable, and genuinely exciting to watch. All the WNBA had to do was protect her, promote her, and build around her. Instead, they allowed jealousy and resentment to poison the well. They permitted veteran players to diminish her accomplishments. They failed to capitalize on the momentum she generated, and now they're paying the price with empty arenas and disappearing viewers. The players who spent all season downplaying Caitlin Clark's influence are now learning what the league looks like without her, and they don't like it one bit. The frustration in Dana Bonner's voice when she said, "It feels like nobody cares," wasn't just about low attendance. It was the realization that maybe, just maybe, the fans were right all along. Maybe Caitlin Clark really was that important. Maybe her impact really was that significant. Maybe the WNBA really did need her more than she needed them. And that's a tough pill to swallow for players who've spent years being told they were the faces of women's basketball. So, what happens now? That's the question keeping WNBA executives up at night. How do you build a sustainable league when your entire audience revolves around one player? How do you convince fans to care about other players when they've made it clear they're only interested in watching Caitlin Clark? How do you recover from the embarrassment of championship tickets selling for $6? These aren't easy questions, and the answers aren't obvious. The WNBA is at a crossroads, and the decisions they make over the next few years will determine whether the league survives or becomes a cautionary tale about squandering generational talent. The veterans who resented Caitlin Clark's popularity are now begging for the attention she brought. The executives who failed to protect and promote her are scrambling to repair the damage. The fans who were dismissed as casual bandwagoners have proven they were the only ones keeping the league afloat. And Caitlin Clark, the player everyone said the league didn't need, has been exposed as the only thing keeping the WNBA relevant in the broader sports conversation. The irony is almost too perfect. The league spent years trying to manufacture stars and build an audience, and then a genuine phenomenon arrived organically, and they didn't know what to do with her. As we move further into 2025, every WNBA game without Caitlin Clark serves as another reminder of her importance. Every empty arena, every ratings drop, every social media post comparing current games to fever games from last season reinforces the same brutal truth. The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark far more than Caitlin Clark needs the WNBA. And until the league fully embraces that reality, until they stop allowing jealous veterans to diminish her impact, until they build their entire marketing strategy around protecting and promoting their biggest star, they'll continue to struggle with empty seats and disappearing viewers. Before we wrap this up, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me honestly, do you think the WNBA can survive long-term if something happens to Caitlin Clark's career? Can they build other stars? Can they maintain the momentum she created? Or is this league completely dependent on one player? And don't forget to subscribe because we're going to keep covering every twist and turn of this story that the mainstream media refuses to talk about honestly. The WNBA Finals disaster wasn't just about low attendance or cheap tickets. It was a wake-up call, a reality check, an undeniable exposure of who really matters in women's basketball. The players who spent months telling fans to appreciate the whole league, not just one player, learned the hard way that fans don't care about narratives or politics or who paid their dues. They care about watching greatness. They care about being entertained. They care about Caitlin Clark. And when she's not playing, they simply don't watch. That's not disrespectful to other players. It's just reality. It's the same reality that every professional sports league has faced throughout history. Stars drive interest. Greatness creates fans. And right now, the WNBA has one genuine star who moves the needle. And her name is Caitlin Clark. The sooner the league accepts that and builds accordingly, the better chance they have of surviving. But if they continue down this path of allowing jealousy and resentment to dictate how they treat their biggest asset, we might be watching the slow death of professional women's basketball. And that would be a tragedy that nobody wants to see.